I want you guys to get really loud, okay? For David Smooke of HackerNoon! Nice to meet you.
Oh man, that's some big room energy in here. That was a lot of dancing, everybody.
David, do you like to dance?
Not as much as you. That was looking good. I'm gonna try to get into some soft skills today. A little bit about like the business side of development and how that overlaps with the technical side. David Smooke. I started HackerNoon 5 years ago now, so we've been at it a while. And the first option if you want to get a job at a startup is to just start a company yourself. That's kind of option one of like, once you decide to do that, there is one job and it's yours. And that job will make an undetermined amount of money. You know, so if you want to do it, you can do it, but it means your development is half your job at most. You're dealing with business, administration, driving customers, figuring out what you do, figuring out what your story is. So this is an option you can always come back to later in your career if you want to start a company later. But it is, I would say, the first option, and it has the highest ceiling. Like if you really want to work at a startup, your own startup is where you'll get the biggest end outcome, but it's also the most likely to be worth zero. So there's, a lot of trade-offs there. And I did do that with HackerNoon, but it's not, how I started my career. In HackerNoon now, we've published about 20,000 people working in tech, from software development, cryptocurrencies, startup, business, kind of mixing the business side with the technical side. We have about 3 million monthly readers. Anyone can contribute. Every story goes through an editor. So if you click Start Writing, you submit on a site, you hear back in 3 or 4 days. And now we're about 12 people full-time and another 20-some part-time. And in solving our own problems to build HackerNoon as a good place for technologists to read, write, and learn and publish, we've built other little applications. And as we build those applications, we kind of decide, is it worth splitting out into its own thing? And a few of those were Slogging, which is a Slack blogging app. So you can use Slack to publish your blog posts. And then some voting software. So that's kind of how we've learned. We mainly employ editors, software development, and business professionals. And solving our own problems created a little applications, which is kind of like a cool way to start like a startup within a startup. And we've published, about 4,000 JavaScript stories. About 80,000 stories are on the site for free to learn how to hopefully do anything in tech. More of today, though, option 2 is kind of the most common. Join another startup. And there's lots of different ways to get in, and it can be tough because these are small groups of people here. And whenever you join a startup, you're trusting a lot of, just divide how many people are in the room, that's the contribution you have to make. So if there's 9 people at the company and you're the 10th one, you have to come in expecting you're going to do 10% of this business and drive it worth 10%. So these are tight-knit communities, and I got my experience joining one of them. It was called Smart Recruiters, and I saw the company go from about 5 to 100 people. So I saw a nice phase of like what it's like to grow. And that was my path of like, hey, apprentice here, be paid what you're paid, get your foot in the door, get some equity in a company for the first time, which is a good feeling. And it was a good experience, and it's a good path to like consider apprenticeship and look at how like, hey, I learned here so I could start my own in a few years. The other option is, more on the outside of it is like, sometimes you don't have the job you want, so you try and get other work. Be patient. And figure out where your skills and opportunities are going to overlap. Because if you have these set of skills and you keep working and you get better at this way of developing something and you look around, what company would I fit in well with? How do I meet somebody there? How do I get in? So there's looking for that overlap, and it's okay to be patient and be on the outside looking in for a little bit. And if you're kind of from the sidelines, I thought it would be helpful to look, as you want to look at transition different industries, and these are kind of, this is for developers, but it really could be for a lot of jobs whenever you're looking to transition in your career. So growing your industry knowledge is one where it could be about your particular set of skills, or you could be interested in a particular vertical. Like if you really care about shoes and you want to be a software development like GOAT app and find shoes, like if you learn more about the shoe industry, you're going to be better to be a software development in the shoe industry. So there's like that area that you can control. And there's a lot of knowledge out there, and you can keep learning about whatever industry you want to be in. And then the second thing I would say is to reach out to people one-to-one. Business and people that just interest you, very short, valuable messages of why you care about what they're doing on the internet. And the internet just isn't this big void, and the company they're making means something to you. So that's a really good thing to dedicate some time to, and say, the people I want to do, that I admire on the internet, I want to work with them on the internet. And then the third one is also completely up to your control. It's building your own shit every day. And so whether it's your own site, your own whatever, your Twitter, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter really what it is. It's just that you're building it. And if it's more in software development, it's yours. And you work on it every day, and you can show people, hey, I was working on it the last few months. You can see what it's done, and it's just growing. So backing up to growing industry knowledge, I thought I'd look across, since I'm from Colorado, I'm down in LA for a month here. And since we're down in LA, I thought I'd use a film example. For years, Tarantino just worked in a video store. No one was ready to give 20-year-old Tarantino $100 million to go do a startup and film a movie. But he just kept learning about the industry. He knew what he wanted it to work at, so he kept in the film. And working at a video store is like a good way to learn about the library and the history of cinema, even if he was paid minimum wage. It was a really good trade-off, and I'm sure if you look back, he wouldn't trade it for anything. He would keep the experience in the film store, in the video store. For me, I didn't really know what I wanted to do out of college, and I studied writing and economics. And so after college, I went to where people go, which was my parents' basement. Great place to go after school. But I did get a job as a newspaper reporter. It was about a 10,000 person paper, and I didn't really know I wanted to be in publishing, and I was kind of the low reporter that I got the leftover stories and obituaries, things people didn't want. They funneled. But one of the cool things of the job, I learned pagination of pages. I learned the business of syndicating content. And all of these in this picture here are the syndicated Dear Abby advice columns, and I would get to rewrite the headline every day and see what I could get away with, and also see what headlines resonated. So that taught me a lot that we reused in HackerNoon. Every story that comes in, we're evaluating the headline, and we're saying, hey, what did we learn about publishing 80,000 stories to write a better headline than this writer did just coming in? So it was a really useful experience, and it gave me money to have a burn rate and say, hey, I'm going to try my own thing for a set amount of time, and I can afford not to have income for X months or 1 year, and I can bootstrap my own business for a while. The next one is looking to reach out to people one-to-one, because the internet's really big. It's pretty easy to contact people. A lot of emails can be found. Direct messages are open. So I would emphasize, as you look to who you want to do business, keeping to very short messages that are the recipient first. So what do I like about your business? How could I help grow your business? And that you're always coming from the perspective of a few of those messages is worth its weight in the dry LinkedIn connection of I have software development services. That message is useless. It's much better to pick who you want to do business with and reach out to them in a short, thoughtful way. And then if you have to go through formal apply or formal whatever review, you already have the leg up because you've created a value add before they're making the decision. And then building your own shit every day, blogging, and it's not every day. It's not if you take a day off it doesn't work. It means there's always a place you can drive people on the internet to say, hey, I have something cool here, and it's mine, and I worked on it. And these are two of the recent software developers that we hired. We went through the process of a skills challenge to kind of weed out who didn't have the basic skills, then 2 interviews, and then we make offers. And these two, had cool personal sites. This is Fabian and Jefferson and Marcos, and their sites kind of stand out. The pixelated stuff of Jefferson, kind of resonated with our brand. It's not it's an amazingly done site. It's just saying, hey, I have a site and it shows my personality. And Marcos, it was you walk into his office and it's this janky old 3D navigation system that makes you think of old video games. So it wasn't they're amazing sites. It's more just they could show their personality, and they already were relating to our value prop that having a personal site and blogging around the internet is a good thing, and you want to drive traffic back to your site. Fun fact for us, everyone started part-time, and we go with the model of once we do good projects together, we try and see if you want to join full-time. And so that's just our startup perspective, and I just bring it up as a startup because money is harder for a startup. So if you have a big client, you're looking at, hey, how do I get a steady rate longer and build a team? Like it's much simpler, and they go through the process. With a startup, they're like, every dollar I spend is a big deal. So if it starts with smaller spend and you prove your worth, it's easy to then say, now I want to double the contract, versus coming in early with the number you really want. So there's some just different things about a startup to consider. And I really come from like in between business and technical. I mean, my job today now, I'm spending I edit stories still, just like I did at the beginning of the site. I'm wireframing stuff on Figma. I'm going back and forth with software developers more as the product manager. And from this perspective, when I'm looking to what software developers do I want to join the team, it's between technical and non-technical. So these are the 4 things I look for in the person I want to work with, as opposed to just as software developer as a whole. Because I think that's in a small team, it doesn't matter what the job is at some level. That you want people that have humility, have empathy, T-shaped intelligence, and are very good communicators. I mean, we're an entirely remote team. If you want to do a project async, your ability to describe where you left the project and how far you got the project and how someone can help you is all really, really important. And even if you do good work, if you can't communicate it to the rest of your team, you hit these blockers where people don't want to work with you or your work gets butchered. And so how well you can write is really important to work with more people when you're across different business functions when you're coding at a startup. And the humility side of it, in the early stage of hiring, you don't know what they're going to deliver. You're assessing what you learn about them. So if you assess that they are humble and that they are able to describe confidently what they can do, but they're going to give the team credit, they're going to talk about how well they work with others, that person is much more likely to over-deliver. So if I sense early when I'm meeting a software developer that they're not humble, I expect in the future they will under-deliver because they're telling me now, by not being humble. So that's kind of what I've learned in hiring 10 or so. No, we're not hiring a ton, so it's still early, but it's something that I think it'll get you further if you have humility earlier. And then the empathy one, we kind of stopped putting our jobs anywhere but on our website, and we wanted people that already cared about our users and people that already cared about our site to work on it and pay to build the site and make the site better. But it can apply to anything. If you really care about who the users are, your work is going to show in all your details. If you're working for a company you don't believe in and you're selling cigarettes, your attention to detail is going to show that you're selling cigarettes and you don't believe in this. So whenever you get a company that you actually already care about their users, you're probably going to do better work. The other one I bring up in a startup specifically is T-shaped intelligence. And this means that you have one very deep expertise, but you're extremely wide. And I can ask you about anything, and you can probably have some learning or education on the knowledge. And this is really useful because when you only have 10 or 12 people, you're trying to do the output of 50 or 100. So whenever you have people that can have skills across all of product development, for example, as a designer that comes in and says, I need a front-end developer, I need a back-end developer, I need a product manager, and I need a business development rep, that's someone that needs 5 people to ship one thing. Whenever you're in a startup, you really want to say, okay, right now we only have a designer and a back-end developer available, can we ship the thing? And if the answer is yes, you have good T-shaped people. So you get paired off in different groups because there's just less combinations because the team's smaller. So you always want to overvalue a little more generalist knowledge, and then the larger the company gets, the more the specificity is a really strong selling point versus something that could hold you back from shipping. So that's something to assess in really the size or the stage of the company. It's just back to the written word as software kind of infiltrates everything here. The ability for the software developer to communicate with business development is so important. And that comes back to both sides being good writers and good communication. And I don't know how many fans of the Office space we have here. That's where he ends up digging his own grave. And anyone can publish on HackerNoon. So it's about 3 to 4 days review time, a lot of software development stories. And in terms of startups, we also have a new thing here. We build our own voting software, and you can vote on Startup of the Year. Anyone can nominate, and then our team approves, but this is also a database of about 40,000 startups. So if you're looking for different startups, you can search pretty much anywhere in the world to find a new startup here. And we have a few career opportunities ourselves. Part-time development, part-time editing, sales. But I'm also available here for some Q&A. This is me. I'm David. And thanks for letting me talk about startup jobs for a little bit.